Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to our Big Book Telephone Step Workshop. Please join me in a request for an open mind and an open heart with the prayer that I call the set-aside prayer. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, my spiritual path, and you. For an open mind and a new experience of myself, my brokenness, my spiritual path, and especially you. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. It's a prayer about reality, isn't it? What can I influence? What can't I influence? The one thing that we've become clear on is that I can't influence much outside of myself. And I even need power to influence things in an effective way inside of myself. I've used the image of a rocket launch, the first stage of a 3-stage rocket launch, based on Bill Wilson's rocketed into the fourth dimension comment on page 25. That first stage is actually an experience of not effective power with regard to our addiction and with regard to our life, unmanageability. And then a search, a desperate search, translated into a decision, a simple decision, a powerful decision, a faith decision, having no certitude, no knowledge, no feeling, no emotion, no experience, empty, thin, dark, insubstantial, a decision nevertheless about power. And step 3, a decision for a relationship with that, which we made a decision about in step 2. And then take the actions that are the commitment in the prayer that is said in community in step 3, the actions of the second stage, removing the obstacles in us to a connection to us, especially to the power that is in us that is not us. At times we may have some certitude about an experience of power. Sometimes we may even have a feeling that goes along with that certitude. It's wonderful when it happens. It's fleeting. Don't chase it. We chase it away if we chase it. Embrace it. Lean into it gently. Don't seek it. Be surprised, humbled, and grateful for it. As we investigate the exact nature of the underlying causes and conditions of our suffering, and we look at instincts gone awry, fight, flight, and freeze as translated into resentment and fear and dishonesty and secrets, especially in our sexual relations. We put it all down on paper, and then we read it to somebody. A minor discussion might ensue, but I'm emphasizing that, as I did in the comments on the fifth step, where the person doing the fifth step does 90% of the talking, and the person hearing the fifth step perhaps participates at a level of around 10%, not that there's any rules, but just guidelines concerning the proportionality. It's not therapy, but it will be therapeutic. It's not a time for teaching, but each person will learn. It's about an experience of, for the very first time, at least in this journey, reading out loud what you've spent weeks, months, and maybe even years writing about, but you write it out in discrete moments as you accumulate them over a long period of time, and then you sit and you read it out loud, continuously, and you hear it for the first time in its comprehensiveness. And it has its way with us. I recommend that the fifth step be done in one sitting, but circumstances might prevent that. Once again, no rules, just suggestions. At least a nice long sit, 1 hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever it takes, so that we hear it consecutively, consistently out loud. And our history washes over us, and we have an experience, a new experience of step one, powerless. We cannot change our history, and it couldn't have been any different. Any thought about coulda, woulda, shoulda is completely unhealthy and ineffective. It's a dark rabbit hole that has no healthy ending. It's just what is. And we accept it humbly. And we regret a lot of it. And we take a look, once we finish it, back over our shoulder at steps 1 through 5 in a meditation to see if we've been diligent. Have we, in fact, been as open as we can be, as honest as we are conscious of being? I try to warn and help and support the perfectionists among us by saying, you can't be perfect. All we can do is the best we can do, realizing even that we cannot do the best that we can do. And that's the best we can do. We lean gently into this process. No violence on ourselves, no violence at all. And in the sixth step, we look underneath for the character defects that were formed by the instincts gone awry. Fight, flight, and freeze, the instincts manifesting in our emotions of anger and resentment and fear and anxiety and secrets and hiding and camouflage and dishonesty, which corrupts our reactions and our behavior, even our attitudes and our way of living, our way of perceiving and our way of reacting. And we need to look at that corruption. What are our character defects? There's no assets here. There's no assets here. By definition, a character defect. In fact, in the Way of Life document, I use the scientific terminology of personality disorder so that we get a real clear idea as to what the psychiatrists and the psychologists are talking about. Not that you have that in the severe sense of a character disorder that's diagnosable in the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual. No, it may not be that severe, but directionally it is absolutely there. I include the nine characteristics of narcissism, not because everybody's a narcissist, no, but because it really reflects the severity, potential severity of selfishness, self-centeredness that we saw is the unmanageability, is the spiritual malady, is the cancer of the soul that Bill talks about, that we're not cured of. I've made a distinction. The book actually makes the distinction. I've explained it the best I can, the distinction between recovered and not cured. Recovered, I do believe, means the product of the first 9 steps. We've been placed in a position of neutrality with regard to our addiction. That's the promise as we enter into the world of the Spirit in step 10. Placed in a position of neutrality. Here, the vocabulary. It's passive. It's a gift. It's a grace. We didn't earn it. We didn't create it. We cooperated with the suggestions and took the actions, and there is some type of correlation between that. But they're in the middle of it, like the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo, depicting the creation, the hand of God reaching down to earth to create humans, and the arm of a human being reaching up to be created, and there's a space in between. That space, the X plus factor, the mystery, that's where the miracle takes place, a gift. Our reaching through our willingness and our action, God's intervention through grace and gift and unconditional love. Those are the terms I use to try to explain this mystery. And it's the same dynamic in steps 6 and 7. 6, it's another inventory. Step 2 was an inventory of our belief about reality and power. Step 4 was an inventory of our instincts gone awry. Step 6 is an inventory of how that instinct gone awry manifests in our behavior, forming habits of behavior, character defects. And you may have 5 and you may have 50, and it doesn't make any difference. They have what you have. I took my list of character defects, I'm analytical as you already know, and I tried to separate them out into families so that I could understand them more readily, see their underlying cause and condition, the exact nature of my character defects. And they went into I had maybe 40 or 50 character defects in 1988 as I saw it at that time. And I distilled it down to 10 groupings. And as I stayed in meditation over the next several days, I distilled it down into 4 groupings: resentment, fear, dishonesty, and self-centeredness. And of course, Bill tells us that it really is about self-centeredness, the underlying cause and conditions. This is the source of our suffering. The survival mechanism, which is natural to us, has been corrupted. Again, I'll use that term, in a way that's not healthy. We haven't grown up. We haven't matured. We haven't seen reality as reality is. We keep expecting reality to be what we want reality to be, to try to sculpt our own happiness and to ensure that, even though it might mean unhappiness of other people. That was helpful to see that the book is absolutely correct. It's based on good physiology, biology, psychology, as we've determined and talked about through steps 4 through 6. And then there's the prayer. The second paragraph on page 76. It's just a prayer. He's assuming that he gives us a prayer, that we pray the prayer. There's no direction there as to praying it with your sponsor or anybody else. Like it does in the third step, it says we choose a spiritual person, an advisor or a guide or a friend to pray the third step prayer with. This man said to me, there's no instruction in the big book or the 12 and 12 concerning praying the 7-step prayer with anybody. So you create your own 7-step prayer. And then when you're ready, you pray it. Which I did, the general prayer. I think I've described to you my overall experience with that, but it's such a powerful, transformational experience, 1988, that I'll give you a recap of it again. I prayed the general prayer from the book. I prayed the specific prayer from my own creation. And the next day I was very clear that I still had that major character defect. I was startled. I went to my meeting, a men's stag step study meeting, crosstalk meeting on the book, out of the steps. And a man shared about being specific. This was such a revelation to me. My sponsor, my step guide, I had never heard it before. Be specific about your prayer in the 7th step. That was his experience. I went home and in a couple of days got on my knees and was ready to pray the prayer specifically. I had to stop. I wasn't willing. I realized I was still attached to. I didn't want to change. I didn't want to change my behavior. I didn't want to change this character defect, knowing that it was devastating, potentially going to interfere with my professional life, with my personal life. And on page 70, Bill confirms in the big book on page 70 that it will, in fact, undermine my program. That if I continue that behavior, I will drink again. We are not theorizing, he says. We're speaking from our own experience. And I believed the book, and I believed my sponsor. And I remembered that the 6th step is about willingness. And it says, if you're not willing, you discover you're not willing. Bill knows us. It's only extreme suffering that makes us willing. He says, if you're not willing, pray for the willingness because you're powerless to be willing. My conclusion. I prayed for the willingness. I prayed this step 7 prayer specifically for the willingness and for the change. And I called the man who was my step guide, related to him, and he then said to me, now stop the behavior, making a critical distinction between the character defect, over which I have no power, and how it manifests in my behavior, over which I am responsible. And he suggests that I pray the prayer every day, specifically, and that I call him every day and give him a specific report on my behavior. Within 2 days, as I recall, 48 hours maximum, the behavior went away. It changed, it stopped. The inclination didn't go away for 2 years. I called him every day for about a week. I was confirmed that the behavior had stopped. We agreed that I would talk to him once a week and then once a month, as we were very clear about the inclination versus the behavior. And the inclination, after about 2 years, went away. Prayer, because I'm powerless. Accountability, because I'm human. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, because it's such a powerful formula. If you really want to change something, some conscious behavior, some conscious attitude, some conscious feeling that you have that is interfering with your happiness, your contentment, the quality of your life, the most powerful recommendation I can make is pray specifically for its change. Whatever the words are, that it's about the intention, not the words. Pray specifically for the change and talk to somebody specifically to be accountable for the behavior that comes from whatever it is that you want to be changed in. The assignment for next week is another inventory. Step 8. Let me just make sure what number it is. Step 8, assignment 21. Another inventory. Use your 4th step and also then your memory of your history. There may be things that you created harm about with people or institutions that are not on your 4th step, not in your 5th step. We'll talk about it. Read the material. There's a lot of commentary in the big book, 76 to 83, about steps 8 and 9. Bill combines them here. I'm not combining them, but it's hard to keep them separate in a way, although they're totally separate. Step 8 is a list. Step 9 is an action. Step 8 is an inventory. You might even look up the word harm. I use the word diminish because it helps me become more inclusive. Harm sounds very dramatic. I use the word diminish. I look at physical, emotional, intellectual, mental, financial, different areas. They're not all impacted, but they're the lens through which I try to screen the impact of my behavior on other people. That's the point. We'll talk about that next week. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, everybody.